2, 3, 4.
Run up your engines! All right, here's an interesting find. Customer just bought this 1990 GMC Suburban, Washington State, West Coast, had it shipped here to Houston, sight on scene, and I'm checking it out, and I gotta say from the very beginning, he's the luckiest man on the planet. Time to go to Vegas. He's on a roll, because check this thing out. Okay, yes, the paint's kind of faded away, but there's no rust. He was worried because the top was all dirty and he thought it'd be rusted. It is not rusted. This thing really does have 40,747 miles on it. Because check it out. It had 2 Hancock tires put on it when it had 32,689 miles. And that was back in, let's find the date here, August 12th, 1997. And lo and behold, check out the front tires. They still have a lot of tread. They're a little dry rotted, but they still have a lot of tread. And it's the same tires on it. So this is perhaps the rarest of the rare. An old car that really does have 40,000 miles on it. I don't see that very often. Okay, some people, they're superstitious. They don't like the idea of buying a dead man's vehicle. The man who owned this passed away, was an estate sale vehicle. Some people might not like that, but in this case, it's real. Where are you ever going to find one of these 4-wheel drive that's only got 40,000 miles on it, but it's 30 years old? That's a rare one, you know. Now, this particular Suburban was the real deal. All right, here we go. Where was it made? Flint, Michigan. I got an uncle that used to live in Flint. He's long gone. As are most of the jobs in Flint, Michigan. Now, back in the day, these Suburbans were built rock solid. Yes, especially with 4-wheel drive, they're tremendous gas hogs. But you don't worry about that with a vehicle, especially back then. And maybe today, too, with the price of oil being so depressed, this might be okay for years to come. We check under the hood. Of course, it's got the big old V8. It's a totally dependable 5.7 liter V8. Now, of course, it's a little bit dinosaur technology because it's just a throttle body injection system. See inside here, it's got the throttle body injection. It's an old system, but it is quite a bit more efficient than carburetors. They're not all that complex like the modern ones. They're not all that hard to work on. And of course, it's a GM, so parts are readily available. You could go to AutoZone right today. I could go 3 blocks down the street and buy 2 injectors. They got them in stock. So it's not hard to find parts for these things. But then again, this thing's only got 40,000 miles on it. A lot of stuff isn't going to be worn out yet. And we can see here, it's still got the original AC compressor, and believe it or not, it works. It doesn't work great because it's low on refrigerant, and it does take R12, the old refrigerant, so it's expensive stuff, but it's still there, and it still works somewhat. If I filled it up, it'd work perfectly fine. Even has the original bottle jack, it's still there, and as he was worried, he thought, oh, this thing's going to be rusted. It's not rusted. Yeah, look at the steering box. That's superficial rust. Bare steel is always going to rust, but the actual vehicle, let's look under it too. So let's check under it. Let's see if it's a rust bucket or not. And we look around, you can see superficial rust. But that's exactly what it is, superficial. The actual frame, solid as a rock. Yeah, the leaf springs are rusty, but that's bare steel. Of course it's going to rust. And the sway bar, it's rusty, but listen, it's still solid as hell. That's solid steel. It would take 1,000 years for that thing to rot away and actually snap. You can see, this is solid metal in here. Not the flimsy rubber crap you see on modern cars. And look, the power steering, the dampener's not even leaking fluid, as old as it is. They used to make them good in Flint, Michigan. This is proof. Even the owner's saying to me, I thought I'd see something dripping. This thing is bone dry underneath. Nothing is leaking on it. They made those things to last back in the day. Oh, America, what's happened in the interim? Got a trailer hitch. This thing could certainly tow. There's no arguing that. And sure, the exhaust system has holes in it. It's old as the hill. The owner's going to replace that. And again, this is superficial rust. Talk about a good design. What do you see in modern ones? Naked gas tanks that are made out of plastic. This is metal and it even has a guard. And there's the rear end I was speaking of before. Look at it. It's dry as a bone. There isn't a drip of fluid coming out of it. It's such a shame they can't make things like this anymore. Because I've had customers with late model ones, and I'm not making this up. They get 45, 50,000 miles, and the rear ends go out because they were poorly made in Mexico with too loose tolerances, so they're coming out of the factory with the equivalent of 100,000 mile wear, even though they're brand new, and then they fall apart 40, 50,000 miles later. This thing still goes like a top. Look how old it is. And as I said, it may be old, but hey, it's still fuel injected. And if you just look at the back, the paint's still good at the back. Let's check the inside. Talk about a cavernous inside. You want space? This baby's got space. You can flop those down. You can carry a lot of stuff on one of these. And look, the rug, the plastic, it's not cracked. They don't make them like this anymore. You can just tell by the noise how solid it is. That is one solid door. And as we check the interior, you can see the seats are still in excellent shape. Look at the room in the back. You can have a basketball game in the back seat if you wanted. But these seats, they're still in good shape. It just amazes me. And what do we have here? The four-wheel drive. Ha ha! It's manually shifted. None of that computer crap. It's got gauges that you can actually use. The fuel gauge, the speedometer, oil pressure, which they don't use much anymore, charging system, and of course a temperature gauge. That's all you really need. But it doesn't have a tachometer. This thing, it doesn't need no stinking tachometer. It's got a big V8 engine. You step on the gas and it goes. Old style transmissions. Let's see how this one works. Now yes, as you drive, this is a land yacht. You more point it like a sailboat than you do direct driving. That's just how these big old things are. You kind of point around the curve, let it wallow a little with the waves, and away you go. It still burns out. Hey, this thing really does only have 40,000 miles on it. The engine's still humming along. And the transmission shifting like a dream. But then again, it's only got 40,000 miles on it. It's still got a hood ornament on it. They don't do that anymore. And it's old with old shocks. Bounces around a little. But hey, it's a giant land yacht. You'd only expect that. It is one solid ride. And of course, the brakes work perfectly fine. Massive discs on the front. Stops this thing on a dime. This thing can make the perfect rat truck. He's thinking about just polishing it all out, clear coating it, and having a perfect suburban rat truck, which I think is a pretty good idea. I'd even keep the old wheels. They're in decent shape. Look at them. Sets it up, make a nice rat truck. I've seen guys convert these things into campers. There's so much space in them. You're still not gonna get stuck in the sand. It's got tons of clearance. This thing's never been lifted. This is the factory clearance. These things are made for serious driving in all kinds of conditions. Now, some people might think he's out of his mind paying $5 grand for this old truck. I'm thinking the guys that sold him to him were out of their minds selling it for only $5 grand. You're probably not gonna be as lucky as this guy finding a gem like this for $5 grand that really only has 40,000 miles. Superficial rust, yes, but the vehicle underneath is a solid monster of a truck. Back when GM knew what they were doing and made them last. Just think, 30 years later. Nothing's even leaking yet. I get them when they're 30 days old, the new ones, and they're leaking stuff already. Now you know the truth about this old Suburban and why I feel this guy got one heck of a deal getting this thing for $5,000 with only 40,000 real miles on it from the original owner, or should I say, the original owner's estate. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Surely you're joking, Saz. I got a 07 Subaru Legacy. My power steering vibrates and has a noise. Our guys changed the power steering pump and even the power steering rack, and it still does the same thing. Help. Okay, well, first find yourself another mechanic. I've seen it happen many times on those things as they age, and here's what happens. The power steering pump puts out a lot of pressure, up to 1,400 pounds per square inch pressure. That goes from the power steering pump to the rack to give you power steering. 13 years old. On a Subarus, that rubber, which has to be very pliable and flexible, often gets old and hard as a rock. When it gets hard as a rock, it starts to vibrate from that pressure. And I had one like that. All I did, it wasn't leaking or anything, but the hose was too hard. Is I took the hose off, I put a brand new flexible hose on, and then the vibration went away and so did the noise. When those hoses get hard, they're rubber for a reason, so they're flexible. But as that rubber gets old, I guess Subaru uses kind of cheap rubber and it hardens too much, then it makes all that vibration. Just replace the high side pressure hose and that should fix the whole thing, because you already paid for a pump and a rack, which you probably didn't need. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.